Hey everybody, I'm Anna McEwen. And now for Bob Switzer with the epic narrative.
Well, we are deep in it now, aren't we? Oh, so many laws. But you know how I feel about those. And remember, a lot of these laws that are being written down are being adapted and applied by Moses as he meets with people day after day in his tent, as he's teaching them day after day in his tent, and to the leadership, and to the then judging the people. Like, all of this is written not live at the moment. It's written years later based on memory, and granted he's got a great memory. So he's also integrating not only what he heard from God, but he's integrating how he applied it at the time. And this is probably one of the more clearer examples of it here in the beginning of this chapter 23 of Exodus, where he breaks down, don't give a false report. And well, I'm just going to read it because honestly, if you haven't read this part, like it's just, man, it's very revealing, right? It says, do not spread false reports. Do not help a guilty person by being a malicious witness. Well, I mean, you could just pause right there. Like, how many of us have done that? Where somebody gives us a false report, or somebody gives us gossip, and we turn into a malicious witness by exaggerating what we also know to be true, or what we've observed. Like, we join, what do we call it? We jump on the bandwagon. Now, it happens, and corporately, it happens, big time in large corporations, or in politics, or, in a community meeting where it's like, one person is guilty of something, and then everybody says, "Oh, I remember." Right? Some criminal gets arrested, and then all the neighbors, start piling on. Well, his mother did that. Well, you wouldn't believe. I remember when he was a little boy and he killed my cat. Clearly, something should have been done. But his parents were very lenient and wouldn't do it. It's just, we become a malicious witness. I probably should stop because you know what? I'm just going to get caught up. Okay, let me continue reading. That was just verse 1. Verse 2, do not follow the crowd in doing wrong. And this is the description of doing wrong, right? But that phrase alone is something to keep in mind. But then it says, when you give a testimony in a lawsuit, do not pervert justice by siding with the crowd. And do not show favoritism, catch this, to a poor person in a lawsuit. Oh my goodness. I mean, think about that. Just in the American justice system alone, how many corporations have had to pay out lawsuits because the jury sided with the poor person? I mean, the famous one that I knew growing up, like when it really took a turn, is when the lady spilled her hot coffee in her lap, and she sued McDonald's for the burns, and she ended up with like $1 million. Now, I know technically she didn't end up with $1 million, and you can look it up. I think she ended up with a couple $100,000. But that's not the point. The point is the jury sided with the poor old lady, not with the court. What did McDonald's do wrong? They literally served hot coffee in a cup that says "Caution, hot coffee." The lady puts it in between her lap as she's driving away, and she spills the hot coffee because of her driving. Somehow that became McDonald's issue, right? And it's the same thing happens. It happens, somebody gets murdered, and they not murdered. I shouldn't say a criminal gets shot, right? And then the parents go after every cop. They go after the mayor. They go after the gun manufacturer. They go after the bullet manufacturer, and not because they think they're guilty, but because it's like, if I can get the jury to side with us as the poor victims, we could end up with millions and millions of dollars, and then we'll be happy the rest of our lives. Literally, like, this is literally God. God is putting this out there. Why? Because that kind of showing favoritism to a poor person in a lawsuit is a slave mentality. It's a victim mentality. It's, I don't have what you have, therefore I need to steal it. I need you to just give it to me because I deserve it. I need reparations for all the hard work that I've done that I don't think I got paid as well as, clearly not as well as you get paid. So I need to get paid more. Like, it's just, oh man, it's maddening. And Moses understood this because he watched it happen day after day as he brought people into the tent for quote, justice. And they would say, well, my neighbor has more than me. And because he has more than me, his flocks eat more grass than mine. And so therefore he needs to give me some of his flocks because I don't have as many flocks and he eats more grass. And it's, poor me. And then the witnesses would side with the poor person, not because the rich person did anything wrong, but because, well, they're thinking, well, if I'm ever poor, I want justice to be on my side. It's just amazing. Anyways, I know Bob's like, how about verse 4? And I'm like, oh yeah, let's continue. If you come across your enemy's ox or donkey wandering off, be sure to return it. If you see the donkey of someone who hates you fallen down under its load, do not leave it there. Be sure to help them with it. Fascinating, right? Again, slave mentality is, if somebody I don't like loses something, well, good for them. I deal with this right now working, at the liquor store, because it's pretty much everybody there that I work with they're good people, but they're in desperate need of a job, and they got a job, and they're almost automatically mad at the boss because the boss makes money. And he has made money. And he dropped out of college because he was making money at a job, at running his own business. So he drops out of college, and he's been running his own business and buying businesses and investing in businesses and running businesses and working very hard. And he's made probably, I know he's made more than $1 million. He's probably made several million. And what do? Well, they immediately don't like him. Why? Because, well, he should pay us more because he makes all that money. And I'm thinking, I mean, now granted, I need the money. I do. I need the job. I would love to get paid more. I would love that, that if I worked there, the amount of hours that I worked there, if I got paid enough that I wouldn't have to take money out of my savings every month to pay my car and house bill. But I do have to take money out every month because I have a mortgage and I have a car payment and I don't make enough there. But I don't get mad at my boss because my boss is making $1 million a year. To me, it's like, good. Let him. I hope he makes $10 million a year. I didn't take the job thinking I was going to make $1 million a year. I took the job thinking I'd make $10 an hour. Guess what I'm making? What he told me I'd make. So I'm not angry with him, but a lot of people do get angry. And so if something happens to their bosses or enemy's donkey, in other words, their way of making money, if something happens, if I totally could see several of my workers being very happy if the business went under, because they'd be like, good, he deserves it. He should have treated us better. And I would think, why would you think that? But somehow, right, we in the slave mentality, the victim mentality, it's like, I want something bad to happen to somebody who's doing good, because then we're even. And then I know God likes me just as much as he likes you, because he got you because you clearly were doing something wrong to be making that much money. That's what a donkey is to them, right? You see your enemy, you see a rich person's donkey or ox wandering off. Don't just be like, ha ha ha, good for you. I hope did they have mountain lions? I hope a lion comes and get it and eats it. I hope the wolves come and eat it because he doesn't deserve it. He's my enemy. That's a slave mentality. He's like, if you see the donkey of someone who hates you falling under their load. You know how we would put that in today's English? If your boss has so much work to do that he can't get it all done, don't leave him there. Work extra and help him out. What? If someone hates you, but they're overwhelmed with work to do, and the donkey has fallen under the weight of it, in other words, their system of support is collapsed, don't leave them there. Help them out with it. Now, if you're in a business, I'll use a friend of mine because he would help out his enemy. So I'm going to use him. I'm not going to give his name, but let's just say you had a pool business. And in that pool business, you have integrity and hard work, and you follow kingdom principles, and you reap what you sow, and you start reaping more and more work. And soon you literally become the number one pool installer, in an entire state, and you start bleeding over into other states because everybody wants a job that's going to be well done with a crew that is well trained and hardworking. And you're going to make millions doing this. It's going to be awesome. But you're working really hard. And you do have competition, and your competition wants you out. They want you out. They don't like you. They've decided you're the enemy. They hate you. But in their hate and in their lifestyle and in their business decisions, they start to become overwhelmed. Do you stand on the sideline and laugh at them and say, well, good, you deserve it? Because you know what? You're not as good as I am. You're not the type of business, you don't run your business the way I run mine. And so you deserve it. That's good. That's God getting you because he likes me better than you. No, I totally could see my friend going to that owner and going to that person who he knows doesn't like him, who he knows would love to see him fail, and say, is there a way that we can help you? I mean, I might be stretched out to the max, but is there a way that we can help you? And I have no idea what those solutions might be, but I know he'd be willing to consider them because that's the type of person he is. And that's the type of person God wants his children to be. So you don't leave the person who's falling under the weight of their labors. You don't leave them on the side of the road and say, ha, good. I hope it crushes you to death. I hope you learn your lesson. Don't mess with me. God loves me more than you. Don't. No. Oh, man, that's just that's bad form. It's bad form. Really not the nature of the kingdom of heaven. Verse 6, do not deny justice to poor people in lawsuits. Have nothing to do with a false charge. Do not put an innocent or honest person to death, for I will not acquit the guilty. Do not accept a bribe, for a bribe blinds those who see and twists the words of the innocent. That's what a bribe does. And there are so many people that have taken bribes in various forms. It doesn't just have to be cash under the table. It could be property. It could be vacations. It could be favors of future job interviews or positions for family members. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that you can be bribed. And you can say, well, I'm not going to let it affect me. Like, I'm just doing what's best for me and my family. I don't let it affect me. And the principle is, yes, it does. You can't help it. It will blind you and it will twist the words of the innocent. You're going to reinterpret what's being said because you're being bribed. You're being paid. And many, many judges are being paid outside of the courtroom. And you can, listen, I'm not going to go into evidence, but you look at what a judge gets paid And then you look at their lifestyle. You look at the price of their home and their cars and the vacations they take. And mathematically, it doesn't match up virtually ever. And you say to yourself, where's all that money coming from? And like so many other politicians and people in power, you follow the money. There's bribery going on. There's favoritism being given. And they can't help it. You will be blinded, and it will twist the words of the innocent. And then it says, do not oppress the foreigner, for you yourselves know how it feels to be foreigners, because you were foreigners in Egypt. So this is just a reminder. He's like, listen, remember where you came from. Remember where you came from, and don't behave like a slave. That's what he's saying. It's not just don't, remember what it's like to be a foreigner. He's like, don't behave like a slave. What does a slave do? Protect its own. A slave is always looking for the best handout, is always looking to gain favor. I've been around a lot of, this is bad. Sorry. I've been around a lot of people who need to raise money. There you go. That's much better than saying what you were going to say. Yes, I agree. Okay. I've been around a lot of people who need to raise money, a lot of people who live based on the donations of other people. And in that mindset, there are those who will not stop raising money. They're constantly raising money. And the richer you are, the more, shall we say, friendly they become with you. And I've watched them from afar, because many times I'm also raising money, and I've watched them, and I think to myself, I can't do it. I can't do that. I can't. Now, as you know, at this time, I'm not making any money, except for what I do make a little bit there at the liquor store. But there will be times, I'm sure, in my life where I have to raise funds. I don't doubt that. There have been times where I have lived completely on the love and generosity of others. And so there is a balance. There are times where you have to ask for money. I get that. I do. And I'm not opposed to that. But this is the out of balance mindset. He's like, don't oppress the foreigners. You remember what it was like to be a slave. You remember what it was like when you depended on the goodness of other people and they took advantage of you. Do not take advantage of other people. Don't oppress them because they don't have anywhere to go. Now, maybe I'll address this in Bob Thoughts, but this is all. What about immigration? Oh man, what does that all mean? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I think a lot of that will be a lot of opportunity for us to interact with immigration and slavery comes in the next set of laws. The next three verses are very powerful, especially when you combine it with information from Deuteronomy and Leviticus. But first, I did want to go back to the idea of false reports, because sometimes we look at that as kind of a narrow definition, and I want to expand it because it's a really big definition. Verse 7, have nothing to do with false charges, and do not put an innocent or honest person to death, for I will not acquit the guilty. So false reports, again, in verse 1, do not spread false reports. Do not help a guilty person by being a malicious witness. False reports, it covers literally all forms of lies. That word, all forms of lies. It involves subtle lies, lies of omission, lying for money, right? We covered that with bribes, lying for your friends who are wealthy, lying for your other friends who are poor, lying for to be friends with the wealthy, lying because you're prejudiced and you think the person, even though they're guilty, still needs to get the money because they are just like you and you deserve money. It's this all has to do. This is like all verses of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. and 9 are all covered under that phrase, false reports. Don't lie to get paid back. Don't lie about those who hate you. Don't lie about those you hate. Don't lie because of race or religion or origin or ethnic background or current employment or lack thereof. Don't bear false witness. And that's why I said that in the beginning, like all of these like rehearsing of the law is really a breaking down into the specifics that Moses has applied the law to over a number of years. And so as he's writing the 10 Commandments, he writes them, boom, in the 10 Commandments. And then he's like, let's review. Let me go over all the ways that we applied this. And I'm not saying that all of this is not God-breathed, inspired word of God. And I have no doubt that there are those who have already shut me down because they're like, Bob is off the rail. But I think that it's all inspired. I do. I don't think this is all, all of this was said on the mountain or written in the stone. It could be, but so I'm not denying it, but I don't think so. I think these are words that are written by Moses, and I wouldn't even go over, I wouldn't fight you on it if you were like, and translators added even more. And I'd be like, well, yep, that's a good possibility. So I throw all that out there because I think that's what the epic narrative does. One of the things we do is we offer opportunities for you to question things without the legalistic approach to scripture that makes you think, I can't question it, or if I do, I got to be really, really quiet about it because God's listening, and if he hears me question his word, he's going to kill me, because that's the way all these laws seem to be written. So I don't think so. I think that these are nuanced. That's a good word. They're nuanced by experience as Moses has led in the wilderness. All right, I want to hit the Sabbath laws. These are ridiculous. It's pretty crazy. This probably is one of the most radical culture-shifting concepts of the kingdom when it comes to, we'll call it the law. This Sabbath law is nuts. And like I said, we're going to add in some of the concepts from Deuteronomy and Leviticus, but of course we'll deal with those probably in the next season, those books. But man, I really want to get to, the judges, and I want to get to kings as well, because we dealt with David in the first season, but there are, a number of other kings to work through. So yeah, I'm looking forward to multiple seasons ahead just because I love what we do here, and I love that you're listening. All right, verse 10. For 6 years you are to sow your fields and harvest the crops, but during the 7th year, let the land lie unplowed and unused. Then the poor among your people may get food from it, and wild animals may eat what is left. Do the same with your vineyard and your olive grove. 6 days do your work, but on the 7th day do not work, so that your ox and your donkey may rest. And so the slave born in your household and the foreigner living among you may be refreshed. Be careful to do everything I've said to you. Do not invoke the names of other gods. Do not let them be heard on your lips. All right, so the Sabbath law is here. This principle, like the others, is very similar. It's kind of written under the umbrella of you reap what you sow. And God is showing this slave victim national culture that they have to change the way they perceive God and the way that they perceive their lives. You, me, they all needed to come to a place where they trusted God with all their provision. And one of the ways that you do that is that you have this Sabbath year, and you remind yourself of the Sabbath year by having a Sabbath day. So every 7 years, they had to let it all go. They couldn't grow. They had to just walk away. This is crazy talk. This is crazy talk. Now, since then, we know that scientifically, it actually is really good for the crops, to rest a field. And actually, there's certain crops that they grow in the field to help them even restore faster. Like I think soybeans is one of the things that they'll do, and they'll just plant their fields full of soybeans, and then at the end of the year they'll plow them under, and it actually, they'll enrich the field. It actually makes the fields produce greater harvests over the next 6 years if you can let it rest. And back in the day, when farmers followed this, they would rotate their fields so that every year there was a field that was on their Sabbath rest, and they would plant 6 of their lots and let one rest, and then and they reaped what they sowed. They reaped much more plentiful harvests because of it. And unfortunately, chemical companies, got involved, and they stepped in and said, hey, we can do it chemically. We don't need to rest the land. We need to produce more food. We need to produce, more. We need to make more money. And they just chemically, I think a lot of our nutritious, all natural food has been altered. I don't want to say it's killing us, but it definitely has taken some of the nutrients out, because chemically we have just stripped the ground of its natural abilities and replaced it with something we thought would be better. I don't think it is better. That's another whole conversation to have. But back in the Bible, Lord was like, I want you to let it go. And just see whatever comes up is what comes up. And let the poor people harvest whatever comes up in that field. And as you know, if you've ever been around farmers, if you just let a field go, there's always like random stalks of corn that will grow up in a cornfield that's being let go. It's kind of funny. We drove a lot when we were in the RV, and we went through some gorgeous farmlands. Oh my gosh. If you've never hit the farmlands of Minnesota and the Dakotas and Colorado, like it's breathtakingly gorgeous. And I can't explain it to you, because I would have never thought just miles of flatness could be so rich in beauty. But man alive, it blew my mind. But you would go by these fields that just look like grass, and there'd be like stalks of corn just popping up all over the place. God's like, yeah, just let it rest. Let whatever grow. Let the animals come in and eat it. Don't shoot the critters. Let the poor people harvest whatever pops up. You just let it go. That's what you're supposed to do. And I'll go into it a little bit more. And then he's like, and then once a week, I want you to remember that, every 7 years, I want you to remember that there's a Sabbath day. Everyone rested, even foreign slaves. And this is to show the pattern of rest for the body, rest for the nation, rest for the world. This is to show that you trust God's provision, that you don't go after your wealth and your provision 7 days a week without stopping. And some people he knew immediately would be like, well, I'll rest, but my foreign slaves, I'll make them work on the Sabbath day. And he's like, no, they rest as well as the slaves that are born in your household. Nobody works. Everybody gets refreshed. This is the pattern of God in the creation story. And you can go back to season 2, where we deal with Genesis and was it just one creation story? Was it 7 creation stories? Was it 9 creation stories? Was it 2 creation stories? Whatever. That's just kind of fun semantics to go through, and opportunities to to say, oh my gosh, I had no idea there were so many options. And mostly we don't know that there were so many options because most preachers don't go into it because they're either one, short on time, or two, afraid that you might question the Bible. And now you're going to leave church and everyone needs to be in church and don't question the Bible. Just do what I say. But in the creation story, the consistency is he rested. He rested. That's a principle of heaven. That's a principle of the kingdom. God rested, and he's like, I want my people who represent me on earth, who represent me. I want the nation that is going to draw all nations to me to show people what I'm like. And what I'm like is I rest. I don't go after this 24/7. I go after it and I rest. I go home at night and I rest. I take a day a week and I rest. I don't constantly try to provide more. I learn to trust the one that I love because trust is one of the major, massive characteristics of love. It shows a trust. It shows a pattern of trust. No work, no extra service. Because sometimes slaves would work extra to please the master. And God's like, no, I don't want any, I'm not a master. I'm not a tyrant. I'm not going to beat you. I'm not going to kill you. You don't have to try and please me with behavior. My goodness is with you always. Even to the end of the days. There is nowhere you can go where my presence is not there. So rest. You can't earn more of me by working harder. Man, there's a lot of preachers that don't like this concept because they want their people to work hard, especially on Sundays. They want their people there. They want them working they want them to come in after work every day for prayer meeting. And then the next day they want them to come in to serve the meals. And then the next day they want them to come in for Bible study. And the next night they want them to come in. And so the people are working all day and then they're in church every night of the week. And then on Sunday, they have to serve even more. And then service goes until whatever time. And then after service, we need more people to serve. And I'm not saying you don't work on Sunday. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there are preachers who are way out of balance on this and have lost the concept of just letting people rest. Because in their mind and in their principle, they're like, well, you can rest when you get to heaven. I want to be working so hard that St. Pete has to tap me on the shoulder and say, put down your bucket, my friend. Put down the bucket. It's okay. It's okay. You're in heaven now. You can rest. Come into your final rest. That is not the principle God's laying out here. As a matter of fact, if we go to Deuteronomy and Leviticus, I'm not going to give you the specifics because, again, I got an entire season coming up on these books, but slaves, right, and debt are returned, and foreigners are released. All borrowing is forgiven in the 7th year, in the year of Jubilee. Every family goes back to their original property. So if you bought it or if they lost it because of debt, you give it back to them. It's not yours anymore. Year Jubilee. It's over. Now that principle alone completely alters the way you do business. It completely changes the way that you approach life. Because every year of Jubilee, every 7th year, you are going to get it back. If you sold yourself into slavery in order to pay debt, you knew it was only for a maximum of 7 years because he was going to send you back home. The fact that you could get your property back after losing it, even if you walked away and somebody else took it over, a relative took it over. Like the whole story of Ruth is based on that. The redeeming of the land. It's a fascinating principle. and it changes the world. The Sabbath laws were about rest, restoration, and replenishing of the wealth back to the people, so that the wealthy who bought it, who paid the debt, who earned the money, who did the work, like they got wealthy the whole 7 years. But after 7 years, they had to give it all back to the people that they got it from, so that that family could start again, so that that family could try again, so that that heritage would not be lost. See, God does not want to cultivate a dependency on debt and interest payments in order to live. He provides this path, this Sabbath law, to provide a path to restore what you lost. Slaves that were working off debt are returned with money and housing to start over. How crazy is that? You paid off your debt. The guy who is paying you, sends you away with startup money and make sure that you have a house to go to, because you got to start over. It keeps those who are wealthy from taking advantage of one another, and actually creates this mindset of the wealthy that says, listen, if I have money, it's kind of my job to take care of people. What? Yes, if you are wealthy in this mindset, the wealthy, having wealth came with responsibility. Not only to continue to get wealthy, but it came with this idea of, wow, if I have money because I'm entrusted to help others. So I find somebody who's in debt. I find somebody who clearly has fallen on hard times, and I can go in and say, okay, listen, I'm going to buy your land. I'm going to work your land. I'm going to get more wealth off of your land. You're going to work for me. But according to this principle, your Jubilee, I'll give it all back to you, and you can start again. But I think I can help you. Because that was the goal. A culture that said, I'm for you, not against you. I'm wealthy, but I'm not against you. I'm wealthy, and I can help you. And not just help you by handing you cash, giving you reparations for the hard work you've done. I'm going to help you because I have the money to help you. And then I'm just going to give it back to you. And hopefully you've learned a few things about money management by being around me. Hopefully you've learned a few things about how to take care of the land by being around my people. And maybe we work out a partnership, a contract, a covenant of some sort. I don't know. But right now, you're in debt and I can help you. What a different perspective. You don't take advantage of one another. You take care of one another. If you become wealthy, you know your money is not yours to keep, but is yours to use, and you give it back, and the nation is blessed. This mindset is so radical, so revolutionary. Think how different the nation of Israel looked during the year of Jubilee, when rather than most nations where the poor just keep getting poorer and the wealthy just keep getting wealthier, and every 7 years, everybody comes back into their property. Everybody comes back into their wealth. Not necessarily, they have enough to start over. Everybody has another opportunity. You want to talk about a change of culture. You want to talk about an attractive place to go and try, right? I know America kind of always had that reputation, like the land of opportunity. Come here, make yourself into anything you want to be. You can be anything you want to be here in America. But the nation of Israel was literally that. And think of the foreigners that would want to come and follow Yahweh because of the principles of heaven that the nation lived under. Man, I'll tell you, it's fascinating, right? It's fascinating because you don't have to know Jesus in order to follow these principles and be blessed, because you reap what you sow. You reap what you sow. And I know that there are many of you that would be like, well, I know a lot of wealthy people and they're just mean and they deserve to die and I hope bad things happen to them. And I will refer you back to previous verses that we read. That's not a good plan. All right. Here we go. Let's see. We're 40 minutes in. Yeah, We're 40 minutes in. Let me just hit this. 3 new festivals are added to the land. 3 times a year you are to celebrate a festival to me. Celebrate the festival of unleavened bread. For 7 days eat bread without yeast, as I commanded you. This is an appointment, a time a month. No one is to appear before me empty-handed. Celebrate the festival of harvest for first fruits of your crop you sow in your field. Celebrate the festival of gathering. 3 times a year, all the men are to appear before the sovereign Lord. Do not offer the blood of a sacrifice to me with anything containing yeast. The fat of my festivals offerings must be not kept until morning, which meant you get to eat and drink all of it that night. Bring the best of the first fruits of your soil to the house of the Lord. Do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. All right, so these festivals were added to the calendar. These are celebrations designed to bring the community together to eat, to dance, to drink wine, to worship, and to share life together with God. Now, I mean, I'm pretty, I don't know. I should have looked this up. I'm pretty sure I think there's a celebration every month in the Jewish calendar. And if it's not every month, it's 11 out of the 12 or something like that. And all but one of them involves copious amounts of wine and meat. I mean, that's what the Lord said here, right? Don't keep the meat overnight. Sacrifice it, burn it, / cook it, and then hand it out. Everybody party. And then one celebration that doesn't involve a whole lot of that, it involves fasting and only eating certain things or whatever. And then at the end of it, though, there's a huge party. So you still celebrate. It's crazy how much God wants to party. He wants people to feel the atmosphere of heaven, which is what? Love and joy and peace, hope. This is the atmosphere of heaven. This is what he wants them to see. He's like, I want all the other nations of the world to look and say, wow, those people love to get together and have a barbecue. Now, I know sacrifice to the Lord is not a barbecue. I understand that, but I'm just throwing it out there for context. In today's culture, it was a party. It was a party. Do I have time? Yeah, we're going to go ahead and finish this chapter. So, verse 20, see, I'm sending an angel ahead of you to guard you along the way and to bring you to the place I have prepared. Pay attention to him. Listen to what he says. Do not rebel against him. He will not forgive your rebellion since my name is in him. If you listen carefully to what he has to say and do all that I say, I will be an enemy to your enemies. I will oppose those who oppose you. My angel will go ahead of you and bring you into the land of the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hivites, Jebusites, and wipe them out. Do not bow down before any gods of worship or follow their practices. You must demolish them, break their sacred stones in pieces, worship the Lord your God, and his blessings will be upon you, your food, your water, and I will take away sickness from among you, and none of you will miscarry or be barren in your land. I will give you a full lifespan, and I will send my terror ahead of you to throw them into confusion of every nation, and I will make all your enemies turn their backs and run. Yeah. I don't know why. I don't have the rest of the verse in front of me. So, who is this angel? Is it the angel of death? Is it death for everyone except for God's chosen? Is this what God is saying? Well, in verse 23, the word wipe out. In verse 27, my terror. In verse 28, hornets. That was pretty crazy. I will send the hornets in front of you. In verse 28 and 31, as they drive them out. None of these words actually refer to that of the death of the people. It refers to the culture of the people, the culture of fear and of idol worship. That's why he says in verse 30, listen to verse 30. Little by little, I will drive them out before you until you have increased enough to take possession of the land. Little by little, as your numbers increase, you and your culture will overcome the land. You will influence the culture to the point that those cultures will be overwhelmed, driven out, running. Like what did he say? They will turn their backs and run from before, turn their backs and run in verse 27. This is not a declaration of genocide from God. It's not. I will establish your borders from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean Sea, from the desert. Do not make a covenant with them, with their gods. Do not let them live in the land. And by live, it doesn't mean not be alive. It means don't let them continue their ways of non-heavenly practices, or they will cause you to sin against me, because the worship of their gods will certainly ensnare you, because the worship of other gods brings death. Not because God brings death, but because the worship of the enemy brings death. You have the kingdom of life and the kingdom of death. If you worship the king of death, you bring death. The wages of sin is death. God is not saying, let's go commit genocide. I put an angel in front of you to completely, destroy everyone. He's like, I put an angel in front of you because you need guidance. Because this is a really, really bizarre way to do things, because you have not seen a culture like this ever on the planet before. You have no reference to it in any experience you've had before. You have to follow the angel. Do what he says. Do not walk away from what he says. Follow my principles of the kingdom, because you reap what you sow. And if you follow him and follow these principles, you will reap a nation that is going to be like heaven, and you will overwhelm the nations of that promised land like a hive of hornets, not by bringing death, but by bringing death to a culture of death. You will bring light into darkness, and darkness always runs. It will turn its back and run. Oh, I'm going to leave it there with you today, but wow, we really had some fun today. And, let's just continue to consider, how far away are we from the kingdom of heaven here on earth? How much do we follow these principles even in our own lives? It's crazy, I'll tell you. God is a radical God, but he's not scary. And he doesn't kill people. All right, that's enough. I'll see you next week on The Epic Narrative.
Don't go anywhere. We've got Bob Thoughts.
Well, there you go. That was I like that episode. But I have thoughts that are kind of tied into it. So early on, just talking about the culture and the that they're coming from versus the culture God's trying to create. He's trying to create a culture of connectivity, of community, of giving back. Not being oppressive with those that are wealthy. Those that are wealthy are culturally supposed to come on alongside those that are poor, help them, be there for them, make sure they don't lose their land, give it back to them. When the year of Jubilee comes, all of this is a culture that, you and I are not familiar with. And I work currently, it's interesting because when I recorded this, I was working at a liquor store. Currently, I'm working at a hospital as what's called a patient observer. I think I mentioned it earlier in one of my Bob Thoughts, but where I observe patients, and I get to see, because I do pay attention, I get to see the healthcare industry. I get to see how regulations have stolen the opportunity for truly caring for patients. I get to see how overworked a lot of people are, And the people are truly the vast majority of them have amazing, caring, loving hearts, and they want to help people. But the system is against that because the system is designed by those who want to make money. It's really it's a system that's designed from a heart of greed, and it develops a culture of fear that says I have to get this done. I have to get this patient, medicated. I have to do this. I have to move on. I have to check in. I have to keep the computers, they have to write up reports, constantly writing up reports. Doctors are not in the hospital they are in the hospital. I shouldn't say that. But the doctors, walk into a room, every doctor, and I've met them, and they're nice people, but they are not looking to spend any time with the patient. They ask their questions rapid fire. And then when they get their answers, it's like, all right, I'll talk to the nurse. I'll get back to you later. Thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow. And they walk away. And the patient has been waiting. Sometimes, I've sat with them. Sometimes they've been waiting 4, 5, 6 hours for a doctor to show up. And a doctor comes in, and it is a minute at the most that the doctor is in the room. And the patient's whole life is now in the hands of that doctor. And in a minute, decisions are made, reports are written up, scripts are issued, and then the nurse and the nurses do all the work of the doctor, right? The doctor gives their orders to the nurse, and the nurse makes it happen. It's a crazy system that is just broken by greed. And it's sad. It's sad. I watch the people that are overrun by it. When you enter a hospital, the minute you're under their roof, you have no rights. So many patients I've sat with are like, I'll just walk out. I'll just walk out. I'm free I walked in on my own free will. It's like, well, you can't, technically, some of them don't physically have the ability to walk out, but, if you have the physical ability to walk out, yes, you can. Against medical advice, AMA, you can walk out. But that goes down on your record as well. And the next time you come in, if you think you didn't have any rights the first time, you walk in after walking out AMA, and it is on, because now you're a psych patient as well, not just physical, but now you're mentally considered, a danger to yourself because you checked yourself out before being medically cleared. It's fascinating to observe, and I am not upset with anybody involved in at least the day-to-day stuff. They are overrun, not in like a military way, but they are oppressed by a system that is built by greed. And so when I listened to this episode, I thought, wow, what would happen, if Moses was taking what he had interacted with God about on the Mount Sinai and started writing down the law and applying it to a healthcare system? How different would that look? And I think it would look vastly different, but I don't think it would change many of the people that work there, because like I said, they're really wonderful people, beautiful people, and often overwhelmed by what they have to do. But their hearts are so good, so good. Anyways, those are my thoughts today. I hope you guys have a fabulous day. I'll see you again next week.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to this podcast on any platform you use. You can also reach out to Bob for questions or booking at thebobswitzer.com or email him at thebobswitzer@gmail.com. See you next week, guys.